Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Gosztola, and welcome to this latest edition of the Dissenter Update. This was a weekly show when Donald Trump assumed office for a second term. We tracked the first 100 days closely. It's now posted twice a month and is part of the Dissenter newsletter, a way for you to support this work that is done over at the dissenter.org. So, for those of you who are paid subscribers, thank you. You're getting this early. Those of you who are not subscribers, I encourage you to chip in a few dollars each month, support the work of the Dissenter newsletter, and get access to this podcast. We cover attacks on freedom of the press, attacks on whistleblowers, and the ramping up of government secrecy. No matter who is in power, this is the type of work that the Dissenter newsletter has done for well over 5 years now. And then myself, I've covered these issues for 15 years. So we have a set of headlines, and then there will be a main story. The main story will be this Defense Intelligence Agency employee who was the latest person. He is the latest person to be charged with violating the Espionage Act, although there's a wrinkle. The wrinkle being that this was a sting operation by the FBI to snatch this person who was willing to give information to a friendly power of the United States because he was fed up with President Donald Trump. So we'll get to that case. It fits into a lot of the topics that are regularly covered here on the Dissenter Update. Here are the headlines. Australia Appeals Court rejects Australia war crimes whistleblowers challenge to prison sentence. The Australian Capital Territory Court of Appeal rejected Australia war crimes whistleblower David McBride's appeal. McBride, who was sentenced to prison about a year ago, challenged his 5-year and 8-month prison sentence. He's the first Australia whistleblower in recent years to be imprisoned for disclosing information to the press. The Human Rights Law Center, the Alliance for Journalists' Freedom, and the Whistleblower Justice Fund reacted by calling on the government of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to enact, quote, robust whistleblower protection reform, end quote. Tuska Lloyd, a campaigner at the Whistleblower Justice Fund, declared, quote, this is another dark day for David McBride and Australia's democracy. David was the first person to be prosecuted and punished for Australia's war crimes in Afghanistan. The whistleblower, not a war criminal, end quote. Next story. Trump picks white supremacist to head the federal government's whistleblower agency. One of the earliest fights over the power that President Trump has involved his firing of Office of Special Counsel Chief Hampton Dellinger. Dellinger had been appointed by Joe Biden. After an appeals court sided with Trump and said he could fire Dellinger, Dellinger abandoned his effort to keep his job. Initially, Doug Collins, who is the Veterans Affairs Secretary, was tasked by Trump to fill the position. Now, Trump has selected Paul Ingrassia to run the OSC. The OSC is an agency for U.S. government employees to pursue claims when they observe or uncover fraud, waste, abuse, or illegal acts within the government. They also review workplace claims involving discrimination and whistleblowing. Ingrassia, who is a podcaster, a commentator, loosely has some experience with journalism, has zero experience with whistleblowers. And worse, he urged Trump to declare martial law and remain in office after Biden won in 2020. Just take a look at him. He would easily fit within the Imperial Security Bureau in the show Andor. Ingrassia appears to be a white supremacist. On December 18th, 2023, he stated on Twitter that, quote, exceptional white men are not only the builders of Western civilization, but are the ones most capable of appreciating the fruits of our heritage. And on May 21st, 2023, he expressed his view that the descendants of slaves should pay reparations to the descendants of slave owners. That same month, he even said that anyone anti Trump is blowing the biggest dog whistle in politics for anti white racism. On LinkedIn, Ingracia said he would prioritize eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal workforce, which basically means that he would like the OSC to become Doja. He would revitalize the rule of law, and Fairness and Hatch Act enforcement was another thing that he said. That probably means he intends to investigate former Biden administration officials for alleged offenses that we know are being committed by Trump officials every single day. The Freedom of the Press Foundation will sue Paramount if the company settles with Trump, as news reporting increasingly suggests that Paramount Global will pay Trump to settle a $20 billion lawsuit over a 60 Minutes segment. It was an interview that aired with Kamala Harris. The Freedom of the Press Foundation announced that it would pursue a shareholder lawsuit if the company agrees to a settlement. In this statement that was put out by Freedom of the Press, it notes that a letter was sent to Paramount Chair Sherry Redstone to put her and other Paramount executives on notice that it plans to file a shareholders derivative lawsuit should Paramount settle with Trump, and to demand that Paramount preserve all records that may be relevant to its claims. FPF, or Freedom of the Press, is a Paramount Global shareholder. A derivative lawsuit, they say, is a procedure that allows shareholders of a company to recover damages incurred due to impropriety by executives and directors. Any damages award would go to Paramount, not Freedom of the Press Foundation. Already, U.S. Senators Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Ron Wyden have suggested that settling with Trump might violate anti-bribery law, particularly as Paramount executives meddle with 60 Minutes and CBS News content. Quote, they said, if Paramount officials make these concessions in a quid pro quo arrangement to influence President Trump or other administration officials, they may be breaking the law. So the people at the top in management for Paramount are engaged in illegality by trying to broker this settlement, at least in the way in which they have chosen to go about reaching this settlement. Furthermore, California state senators are now investigating whether Golden State bribery and unfair competition laws are being violated or will be violated if Paramount settles with Trump. Several state lawmakers oppose Paramount's capitulation to Trump, saying that it will undermine and is undermining free press and any idea of an impartial rule of law regulatory system. The next headline: NPR and PBS sue over Trump's retaliatory funding cuts. Both National Public Radio, or NPR, and the Public Broadcasting Service, or PBS, have sued President Trump's administration over proposed funding cuts. NPR and PBS argue that the administration is violating their First Amendment rights by engaging in what is considered to be viewpoint discrimination. Our Constitution and laws forbid the president from serving as the arbiter of the content of PBS's programming, including by attempting to defund PBS, PBS declared in their lawsuit. Katie Fallow, Deputy Litigation Director at the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, commented, quote, it's a bedrock principle of the First Amendment that the government may not censor speech or skew public debate by imposing punitive financial measures based on a speaker's viewpoint or editorial decisions. Trump's directive to cut off all federal funding for NPR and PBS on the ground that these broadcasters are biased, that's in quotes, and that they espouse, quote, left-wing propaganda, violates this central principle and is just the latest in the Trump administration's attempt to silence critics and control the press. The administration's actions are plainly retaliatory in violation of the First Amendment, and the lawsuit should prevail in court. Our final story: police may not sue Nevada residents over records requests, state Supreme Court rules. When a Nevada resident requests public records, no one in any police department or state government agency is allowed to turn around and sue that person. That's according to a Nevada Supreme Court ruling issued on May 28th. And isn't that a relief? This decision came in a case involving the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. The Metropolitan Police Department chronically is violating the state's open records law and frustrating efforts on the part of media organizations to obtain files. This particular example of secrecy abuse is one that involves a 2009 settlement between soccer player Cristiano Ronaldo and Catherine Mayorga. Mayorga accused Ronaldo of raping her in a Las Vegas hotel room, according to the Las Vegas Review Journal. The Review Journal and ACLU of Nevada fought the Vegas Police Department's effort to use a judicial confirmation law to further its secrecy aims. And Ben Lipman, the chief legal officer for the Review Journal, said in a statement that they were pleased with the state Supreme Court's opinion. The Review Journal, together with the ACLU, worked long and hard to ensure that Metro and other governmental entities cannot drag people into court for simply asking for public records. So there it is. That's the issue that was at stake here, that in an effort to find some manipulative way that this could serve the police, they tried to twist it and get a ruling that would be favorable to the police department. And instead of just letting it be a thing where Ronaldo and Mayorga had objected to the release of documents about them and their private settlement. So that's the headlines for this week's show. Those are the headlines. There were 3 stories that I was able to get to during the past week. And indeed, as I had predicted, the amount of posts for the month of May were drastically smaller or fewer than most months. I did not have as much time as I was involved in a project, some FOIA journalism about a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that involves DEA files that the Human Rights Defense Center obtained. I'll have a story to share in the coming months, and I look forward to putting that out there for you. There's another project that I'm working on this month and into July. So I've chosen to pause billing. So anybody who signs up for the newsletter or the podcast will be getting a free month essentially with their monthly subscription. You can consider it a trial. So if you go to thedissenter.org, you can sign up there. And as a subscriber, you can support the kind of journalism that occurs on press freedom, whistleblowing, and secrecy at the Dissenter. The stories that I were able to get to, I probably would have covered as headlines if I didn't get a chance to write about them. I did a piece updating everyone on Australia tax whistleblower Richard Boyle, who in Australia is pleading guilty to charges. He has faced a vindictive prosecution against him for several years related to what he exposed about how there was abuse against smaller businesses by a tax agency in Australia. He is a former debt collection officer in the Australia Taxation Office who exposed these abusive practices, and then was raided, was targeted by the Australia government. At one point, faced 66 charges. That's now down to only a handful of charges, and made a agreement with the government that we're told will allow him to avoid jail time, which is why he accepted the agreement. In another story that updated something that the dissenter had covered, the police raid against journalist Asa Winstanley, and Winstanley is with the Electronic Intifada as an associate editor. That raid was declared unlawful by the Central Criminal Court in the United Kingdom, and he was able to get electronics back that were seized unlawfully from him in this raid. And so he has computers, phones, other devices that were taken. And then if I continue on to this other story that I managed to get up in the past week, a journalist sued the LA County, Los Angeles County, and then ex Los Angeles County Sheriff Alexander Villanueva for criminally investigating her. This is a former Los Angeles Times reporter, Maya Lau, who is accused the county of unlawfully retaliating and violating her First Amendment rights because she did journalism on what are known as problem deputies. These are people who are on a Brady list and they're flagged, and the government actually knows that they have records of not telling the truth and spreading falsehoods, and that they're not reliable witnesses if they would be called to the witness stand in any criminal cases. And so those names made it out there. There were also attention brought to officers that are responsible or have been involved in misconduct, or they have disciplinary issues, and they were able to keep their jobs. And Villanueva, being a problem officer and actually a kind of a sociopath on his own, he had Maya and another few journalists and political opponents investigated because he wanted to shut them down. So that lawsuit, we'll keep tabs on it. It's a good and important lawsuit to challenge attacks on freedom of the press by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. And now let's get to the main story for this edition of the Dissenter Update. The Defense Intelligence Agency IT specialist who was arrested for allegedly attempting to trade state secrets to a friendly country of the United States in return for citizenship. And so this is all from an affidavit or an indictment from the Justice Department. Oh, we should recognize that not everything in these affidavits or indictments will necessarily be truth. These are the facts as alleged by FBI agents or federal prosecutors who obviously have an incentive to convict and put this individual behind bars. So Nathan Villas-Latch, a 28-year-old from Alexandria, Virginia, an IT specialist who was part of the Insider Threat Program. So the very program that would detect Latch is the one in which he was involved. And he allegedly boasted about how he knew how people would be identified. So he thought he could evade being detected. And that did not work. So let's get to some of this. Remarkably, what I will focus on is the fact that an operation was set up by the FBI. So back in March, they found a message that was sent by Latch allegedly. And he's actually being charged under 794A of the Espionage Act. So this isn't typically the one that has been used to crack down on people who are leaking to the press. This is different. But what he has in common with some of the people who have been targeted in the past is that he's politically opposed or resents the present agenda of the administration that is in power. So there is this commitment to engaging in some form of dissent, but he would like to do it by reaching out to a US ally and then obtaining asylum and effectively asking for citizenship is, in a way, asking for asylum. You look at the alleged timeline from the FBI, and apparently there was an outreach that went out to assume somebody in Germany. This is what the Washington Post has reported, that it was German citizenship that Latch was seeking. So Latch wrote, supposedly, I am an officer of the Defense Intelligence Agency serving in a technical role in support of our internal officer of security. The recent actions of the current administration are extremely disturbing to me. I do not agree or align with the values of this administration and intend to act to support the values that the United States at one time stood for. To this end, I am willing to share classified information that I have access to, which are completed intelligence products, some unprocessed intelligence, and other assorted classified documentation. We don't really know what kind of information was going to be shared or what Latch intended to share. We probably never will find out what particular information would like to be shared. But what we do know is that according to this affidavit by an FBI special agent named Matthew T. Johnson, who has been in this position in some form or manner since October 2004. So he has a 20 plus years of experience with this type of action, I imagine, has investigated cases involving national security, and is someone who could speak about the manner in which a sting operation was set up to entice Latch to go forward with providing these secrets to Germany so that they could then arrest him for an actual crime. Just, reaching out, making the overture. That's something that the system, it appears, detected. And so they were aware that somebody inside the insider threat division was now planning to give secrets to an allied country. Rather than fire this individual, rather than move them to a new position or put that person through counseling or some disciplinary process, it's clearly they're having trouble with the way that politics have uh, just metastasized in the executive branch. They are instead made a target by the FBI. And so, as you read through this affidavit from this FBI special agent, you see all this effort that went on to identify Latch and find that he had access to classified information. And then basically, they set up a drop site for him to take documents. The FBI could confirm that these are secret or top secret level documents, and then they could move in on Latch and arrest him. And I believe it was in a park, a public park in Alexandria. I think that they agreed that they would arrest him. Like I said, he's a data scientist, an IT specialist of information security inside of the insider threat division, and the FBI operation commenced on March 23rd. As this is commencing around that time, we already know that there are polygraph exams that are happening. There's a Wall Street Journal article that you should consider reading. I'll probably do my part to share some tidbits of it at some point, but we've done some writing and coverage on the lie detector tests that employees of the government are being subjected to, and what I believe are a targeting of dissenters. So people have already been put under a cloud of investigation throughout the agencies, where it's most likely that there will be people who disagree with Trump. And his executive branch or cabinet. And by April 4th, you have an FBI agent reaching out and basically impersonating someone from this country, so a German, and having a conversation with Latch about the types of information that he's willing to share. And he eventually does come back and say, I've given a lot of thought to this before any outreach, and despite the risk, the calculus has not changed. I do not see the trajectory of things changing and do not think it is appropriate or right to do nothing when I am in this position. So there's an approach to this of someone with a whistleblowing mindset, somebody who acts as if they have altruistic principles, but not going to the press with information, instead, going to a foreign power. And we can speculate about what it is that Germany might want to know about the president's agenda, but it's unclear as of right now what that would be. On April 18th, 2025, there's more back and forth between an FBI agent and Latch. Obviously, he doesn't know that he's speaking with an FBI agent, but somebody pretending to represent that country is communicating with him at this point. They're discussing how to copy and exfiltrate classified information. And then he says his workspace is in Washington, D.C. On April 27th, 2025, the FBI agent, who is still believed to be a representative of Germany, is requesting that Latch provide a sample of the classified information that he has said he had access to be reviewed and authenticated. So that information is showed. Expected this would be coming at some point. Understood and will accommodate. I'll use my personal computer to digitize what I collect. And in the next days, Latch is preparing that information. There are videos that are captured, so it's well known that he is now being targeted in this operation. So we've got Defense Intelligence Agency surveillance video of Latch writing pages of notes and then removing them from a notepad at his desk, folding them into squares, and then he puts them in his socks, folding the papers, putting them into his socks. And so it's obviously detected that he is, in fact, engaged in the smuggling of classified information. And so, according to this affidavit, they keep going with this operation. At this point, as he's putting those documents into his socks and leaving his workspace with that information, he has committed a crime, and the FBI could cut it off at that. But they proceed to go forward with an even deeper action that can make the criminal offense against Latch that much more severe. And that's the dead drop operation that they are discussing on April 30th. And then into May, on May 1st, there's surveillance that is going on, and uh, the FBI retrieves a thumb drive from the Arlington Park in which they meet on May 1st. The thumb drive is found to contain a message from Latch. He says on this thumb drive, I'm including additional documents to provide additional context on the product selection rationale notes. I choose to include a decent sample size and decently demonstrate the range of types of products. It's not all encompassing, but it should give a good idea. Whenever possible, I have retained classification markings. There's no direction provided on topics of interest. I selected the topics partially based on assumed interest. I have the best of my ability attempted to copy the products by hand, but I cannot guarantee that every single word is completely correct. If there are any mistakes, they would only be a basic word or two. Okay, so at that point, he's made it clear to the FBI what kinds of information can be passed along to this country, which he doesn't know he's being targeted by the FBI. Though at this point, all of the conduct that Latch is engaged in, and he's part of the insider threat division, he should be thinking about whether, that person he's communicating with truly is a representative of Germany. And depending on who that representative is, would Germany even keep this quiet, or would they tell somebody in the US government that a person was, making this overture? I don't know. So then on May 7th, he says, "Good afternoon. I'm glad to hear what I provided was satisfactory. I expect there to be more routine exchanges in the future. I'm also interested in what or if there will be any contingencies provided in the event of issues. With my own credibility now hopefully established, I would like to outline something pertaining to the longer term of this arrangement. I'm not mentioned compensation, as this is not my motivation. There's, though, something I'm interested in, but can be discussed at the appropriate time, and it's about citizenship within Germany." Again, Washington Post saying that this is German citizenship that Latch was after. And they set up this meeting that they can have in the park May 23rd, 2025. This contact advised Latch that we be prepared to receive additional classified information the following week. And then the FBI later suggests that Latch be prepared to transmit the information on Thursday, May 29, 2025. And Latch responds that that can be done. And so he was arrested days before recording this. I'm recording this on June 1st. He was arrested, and think he was arraigned. By the time that you watch this segment, he will have been arraigned. He's charged under 794. That is more akin to espionage behavior. At least it implicates more obviously espionage like behavior. It's not this, the willful transmission or retention, causing information to be published on the internet type of offense that you see with leak prosecutions that don't really clearly seem to implicate some kind of impact on the intelligence apparatus, that more evidently seem to be targeting people who are challenging policy making by the US government on national security or military matters. Highly likely that this will end in a plea agreement and there won't be a trial, and they will get somewhere around like a 10 to 15-year sentence in probably a medium security, if not maximum security prison. And there may even be communications restrictions imposed on them for the effort that they made to reach out and share secrets. And I think the harshness of the punishment will be even worse than Joe Biden, because we're seeing from the Biden administration, we're seeing from the Trump administration the commitment to use the punishment system even more aggressively than Biden, which is not to say that he was lenient towards this kind of a Espionage Act prosecution, but that they really wanted to target and go after these people to protect Donald Trump from anybody who would dissent. While this isn't a case, while this type of a case isn't necessarily one where we have a truth teller who we should hold up as being unjustly persecuted, at the same time, we need to recognize the fact that there will be a chilling effect on whistleblowers and dissenters within agencies, and that it reinforces the culture of fear within these agencies that says that they need to have these polygraph exams, they need to be trying to identify disloyal employees, that they need to be looking out for quote unquote deep state actors as they believe them to be, and that they need to root these elements out of the agencies so that they can have 100% people moving in lockstep with Trump, and that they don't have to worry with just disgruntled employees who will turn on them, go to various countries, or even go to the press to expose what Donald Trump is doing while he is in his second term. That does it. That does it for this edition of the Dissenter Update. I'll have more headlines for you and a show in a couple of weeks, but until then, take care of yourselves.